Get the new girl out of my trauma bay. We need a real doctor, not a paper pusher who's going to faint at the sight of blood. The small crowd of exhausted corpsmen and nurses flinched. The words, sharp and dripping with condescension, echoed off the sterile green walls of the forward operating base's primary medical tent. Dr. Evans, chief of trauma surgery and a man whose ego was as inflated as the blast-proof structures around them, gestured dismissively with a blood-stained glove. His target was a woman standing quietly by a supply cabinet, her back to him. She didn't turn. She didn't react. She simply continued her task, arranging suture kits on a stainless steel tray with a focused, almost meditative precision. The nervous energy in the room, a chaotic symphony of beeping monitors, hissed orders, and the low moans of the wounded, seemed to part around her, creating an invisible bubble of profound calm. But when the base commander, Colonel Davies, who had been observing from the shadows of the tent's entrance, saw the way her hands moved, he saw something else entirely. He saw a discipline that had nothing to do with nursing school. If you believe that true competence needs no introduction, type silence below. The heat inside the tent was a physical presence, a suffocating blanket woven from dust, antiseptic, iron-rich blood, and the cloying sweetness of fear. Outside, the Afghan sun hammered down on the HESCO barriers and gravel lots of FOB Griffin, bleaching the very color from the sky. For the men and women of the trauma unit, this was the crucible. It was a place where life was measured in seconds and confidence, even the loud, abrasive kind projected by Dr. Evans, was a necessary shield against the relentless tide of human suffering. Evans thrived in this environment. He was a good surgeon, technically brilliant, but his skill was welded to an unshakable arrogance. He believed in hierarchies, in loud commands, in the clear and visible lines of authority. He saw the world in terms of loud lions and quiet sheep, and he had long ago decided which he was. The new arrival, this nurse was, in his estimation, a sheep of the meekest sort. Her name, according to the duty roster he'd glanced at that morning, was Anna Morgan. She had arrived on the last C-130, her paperwork listing her as a temporary augmentation nurse with a background in emergency medicine. She was of average height, with plain brown hair pulled back in a severe regulation bun. Her face was unremarkable, and her uniform, though clean, seemed to hang on her, as if she were a ghost, an afterthought in the fabric. Her most defining feature was her silence. In the 12 hours since her arrival, she had spoken perhaps 10 words, all of them quiet acknowledgments. Yes, Dr. Onnet understood this silence was not shy. It was something denser, more absolute. To Evans, it was a vacuum, a sign of weakness and inexperience. He interpreted her quiet focus as the paralysis of fear, the telltale sign of someone who was in over their head. He had seen it 100 times before. The fresh faces, arriving with pristine uniforms and wide eyes, who froze when the first casualty transport roared up to the bay doors, its sirens screaming like banshees. He had no time for it. Not here. Not now. His latest tirade was directed at her methodical arrangement of the suture tray. Morgan, are you polishing that thing? We're not preparing for a state dinner. We're trying to stop people from dying. Do you understand the difference? A few of the younger corpsmen snickered nervously, their eyes darting between the imperious doctor and the silent woman. They knew better than to cross Evans. His word was law in this domain. Anna Morgan finished her task. The tray was a work of art, a surgeon's dream of efficiency. Every needle driver, every forcep, every packet of gut and silk was laid out not just for access, but for instinct. It was organized for a surgeon working blind, by feel alone, in the dark, under fire. An old corpsman, a grizzled chief petty officer who had seen more than his share of surgeons, watched her hands and felt a flicker of something he couldn't name. It was a familiarity, a muscle memory in her movements that was deeply out of place. She finally turned, her gaze not defiant, not fearful, but utterly neutral. It was the calm, assessing look of someone observing a weather pattern. The tray is ready. Doctor, her voice was low, even, betraying no hint of emotion. The utter lack of reaction seemed to infuriate Evans more than any argument could have. He saw it as insubordination wrapped in a cloak of feigned incompetence. He was about to unleash another volley of insults when the comms unit crackled, a burst of static that cut through the controlled chaos of the tent like a blade. The voice on the other end of the radio was thin, stretched taut by panic and the immense distance it had traveled. It was a voice fighting through the electronic snow of a failing encrypted signal, a voice gasping for air at high altitude. Griffin Med, this is Archangel 2. We have a Kilo Echo Indigo. I repeat, a Kilo Echo Indigo. Eagle Down, the acronym for Key External Individual, sent a jolt through the room. It signified a high-value asset, someone whose loss would have strategic implications. Dr. Evans was instantly in motion, his personal grievances forgotten, replaced by the pure, adrenaline-fueled focus of the trauma surgeon. Location. Give me a location, he barked at the comms operator. The operator, a young specialist with sweat beading on his forehead, frantically adjusted dials. Sir, signal is weak. Somewhere in the Hindu Kush, grid coordinates are corrupted, static washed over the speaker again, followed by the same strained voice. Can't get a bird to him. Terrain is hostile. Fire is heavy. Echo 3-1 is hit bad. Chest wound. Tension pneumo. We can't stop the bleed. Evans grabbed a whiteboard, his hand flying as he began to list protocols, potential procedures, equipment to prep. Give me Oneg blood, chest tubes, a full thoracotomy tray. Someone get the flight surgeon on the line. I need to know the absolute limit for a dead stick landing on that ridge. The room became a whirlwind of efficient, practiced movement. Everyone had a job. Everyone knew the dance. Except for Anna Morgan. She stood perfectly still, her hands at her sides. Her head was tilted slightly, her focus absolute, but it wasn't on the flurry of activity around her. It was on the crackling speaker, on the spaces between the words, on the desperate, ragged breaths of the man on the other end of the line. She was listening not just to what was being said, but to what was being omitted. Colonel Davies, still by the entrance, watched her. While everyone else reacted to the chaos, she seemed to be processing a different stream of information entirely. He saw her eyes narrow, just for a second, a flicker of intense calculation in their placid depths. The voice came through again, more desperate this time. He's fading. I can't. The standard kit isn't working. He's saying something, a code. He's repeating. On block clip, Morgan's bypass. Does that mean anything to anyone? On block clip, Morgan's bypass. It's all he'll say. A profound silence fell over the medical staff. Evans stared at the speaker, his face a mask of confusion. What the hell is that? He muttered, turning to the chief petty officer. Is that some new TCCC protocol I missed? The chief shook his head. Never heard of it, sir. Sounds like gibberish. The man's delirious, hypoxic. Evans nodded grimly, his face hardening. He's hallucinating. A phantom procedure. It means his brain is shutting down. Damn it. He slammed his hand on the counter, the sound cracking like a gunshot in the tense silence. It was a death sentence delivered by proxy. The man on the mountain was too far, his injury too complex, his mind already gone. There was nothing they could do but listen to him die. The collective hope in the room deflated, replaced by a grim, metallic taste of failure. They were healers, but their hands couldn't reach. They were saviors, but they were helpless. But one person in the room did not look away. One person did not accept the diagnosis of delirium. Anna Morgan took one precise step forward. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it cut through the despair with the clean, cold authority of a scalpel. It's not delirium. Every head turned towards her. The quiet nurse, the ghost, had spoken. It's a procedure. Dr. Evans spun around, his face a thundercloud of disbelief and fury. The audacity of the new nurse, the paper pusher, to contradict his diagnosis in the middle of a critical incident was beyond comprehension. What did you just say, Morgan? Did you say it's a procedure? There is no such thing as Morgan's bypass. It doesn't exist. It's not in any medical textbook. It's not in any field manual. The man is dying, and his oxygen-starved brain is inventing nonsense. Now get back to your corner and stay out of the way of the professionals. His voice was a whip intended to humiliate, to put her back in her place. But Anna didn't flinch. She met his gaze directly, and for the first time, Evans saw something behind her eyes that wasn't neutrality. It was a cold, hard certainty, an absolute conviction that was as unnerving as it was inexplicable. Give me the headset, she said. It wasn't a request. It was a command delivered in a voice that held an entirely new timbre. The arrogance in Evans's expression curdled into pure, sputtering rage. You will do no such thing. You are a nurse, and you are relieved of duty in this bay until you learn your place. Comms but he was cut off. Give her the headset. The voice came from the entrance of the tent. It was Colonel Davies, and his tone was flat, absolute, and left no room for argument. He had stepped fully into the light, his gaze locked on Anna. He didn't know what he was seeing, not yet, but he recognized the signature of elite competence when he saw it. He had seen it in the eyes of his best pilots before a dead stick landing, in the hands of his best EOD techs before the final snip. It was a state of being beyond fear, beyond ego. It was the quiet confidence of a master. The comms operator, caught between two powerful authorities, hesitated for a split second before the colonel's rank went out. He unhooked the headset and held it out. Anna took it without a word, her movements fluid and economical. She settled the band over her head, adjusting the microphone with a practiced familiarity that did not go unnoticed by the colonel. She keyed the mic. Archangel 2, this is Griffin Med Actual. I read you. What is Echo 3? One's current respiratory rate. The entire room held its breath. Her voice over the comms was transformed. It was stripped of all warmth, all femininity. It was a tool, a precision instrument. The voice from the mountain, surprised, crackled back. It's maybe 6 breaths per minute. Shallow. Very shallow. The cyanotic understood, Anna said, her voice a calm counterpoint to the panic on the other end. The procedure is not a bypass. It is a field-expedient pericardial drain using an improvised trocar. You're going to perform it. I'm going to walk you through it. Acknowledge there was a pause. The man on the other end was likely a highly trained Special Forces soldier, but he was being given instructions by an unknown female voice for a procedure he'd clearly never heard of. Who is this? This is Griffin Med. The name of the procedure is Morgan's Clip. Now, listen to me very carefully. You will not deviate from my instructions. Your operator's life depends on your ability to follow them precisely. First, locate the 5th intercostal space, mid-axillary line. Anna began to speak, and the world outside the headset seemed to dissolve for her. She was no longer in a brightly lit trauma bay. She was on that cold, wind-swept mountain, her voice a lifeline cast across 1,000 miles of static. She walked the spotter through the procedure, a brutal, improvised piece of battlefield medicine. She had him sterilize a combat knife with hand sanitizer. She had him take the ink tube from a pen to use as a catheter. She had him use the metal clip from a mission dossier, the on-block clip, to secure in place. Her instructions were a masterclass in clarity and calm. Find a notch at the top of his sternum. Move your fingers down. Feel the ribs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Now move to his side, halfway between the nipple and the armpit. That is your insertion point. Tell me, when you have it, the spotter's ragged breathing was the only sound. I have it. Evans watched, his mouth slightly agape, his entire worldview beginning to fracture. This wasn't medicine as he knew it. This was something else. Something harder, older, born of necessity and desperation. It was witchcraft performed with a pen and a knife. The tension in the trauma bay was so thick it felt like a physical weight pressing down on their chests. Every person in the room was frozen, their attention locked onto the small, unassuming woman with a headset and the calm, authoritative voice. She was painting a picture for them, a grim tableau from a world they could barely imagine. Through her words, they could almost feel the biting wind on the mountain, see the spotter's trembling, blood-slick hands, hear the shallow, failing breaths of the sniper. She was a conduit, a bridge between their sterile, orderly world and the raw chaos of the battlefield. You will feel a pop as you push through the pericardial sac. And his voice continued, steady as a surgeon's hand. Do not go deeper. The heart is right there. You need to be precise. The depth of the blade should be no more than the width of your thumb. Acknowledge. Over the speaker, they could hear the spotter's panicked, hitching breaths. God, okay. I understand. Going in a long, agonizing silence followed. In the tent, no one moved. No one breathed. Dr. Evans stared at Anna, his face pale, the condescending smirk completely gone, replaced by a look of raw, stunned disbelief. He was a man who had built his identity on being the ultimate authority in a room, the loudest voice, the sharpest mind. And now, he was a spectator, watching a quiet nurse he had dismissed as incompetent perform a miracle by remote control, using a procedure that wasn't supposed to exist. The seconds stretched into an eternity. For Evans, it was a slow-motion deconstruction of his own arrogance. Every calm instruction from Anna was a brick being removed from the wall of his prejudice. Every shaky confirmation from the spotter was a testament to a form of competence he had never considered. A competence that didn't announce itself, that didn't demand respect, but simply was. Finally, the spotter's voice, choked with emotion, crackled through the speaker. "I'm in." It popped. "Oh God, there's fluid coming out." "Dark fluid, good," Anna replied, her tone unchanged. "That's the cardiac tamponade draining. Now, take the ink tube from the pen. Insert alongside the blade, then carefully withdraw the blade, leaving the tube in place. This will act as your drain. Use the en-bloc clip to secure it to his skin so it doesn't dislodge." Another tense pause, filled with the sounds of fumbling and strained effort. Then a gasp from the other end. His color is coming back. He's taking a deeper breath. Holy, it's working. It's actually working. A collective, audible sigh of relief swept through the trauma bay. It was a physical release of tension, a wave of shared victory. The young comms operator looked at Anna with something approaching religious awe. The chief petty officer slowly shook his head, a small, knowing smile touching his lips. He'd seen ghosts like her before, quiet professionals who moved through the ranks. Their legends whispered, but never confirmed. Dr. Evans simply stood there, speechless, his world tilted on its axis. Anna continued, her voice pulling the spotter back from the edge of his relief, refocusing him on the mission. "The danger is not over. He is still critical. You need to monitor the drain and keep him warm. A medevac helicopter is being rerouted to your position now that the immediate threat is managed. They will find you. Stay on this channel. I will stay with you." She didn't celebrate. She didn't acknowledge the stunned faces around her. She simply continued her work, her calm a steady anchor in a sea of chaos. The impossible had been achieved. A man who was clinically dead just moments before was now breathing on a desolate mountainside, kept alive by a ghost on the radio and a procedure that, according to Dr. Evans, did not exist. The silence that followed was different from the one before. It was not tense. It was reverent. It was the sound of assumptions shattering. It was the sound of a legend being born. Colonel Davies let the moment hang in the air, allowing the full weight of what had just transpired to settle over the room. He watched as Anna Morgan continued to murmur quiet, reassuring instructions into the headset, her focus still 1,000 miles away. He had seen enough. He turned to his aide, a young lieutenant who was staring at Anna with wide, unblinking eyes. "Give me Commander Morgan's full service record," Davies said, his voice low but firm. "The unredacted version." Now the lieutenant blinked, confused. "Sir, her name is Anna Morgan. She's a civilian nurse on temporary assignment." The colonel's gaze was like granite. "Lieutenant, that woman is no more a civilian nurse than I am a ballet dancer. Give me the file." The aide, recognizing the steel in his commander's voice, scrambled to comply, tapping furiously on his encrypted tablet. Dr. Evans, finally finding his voice, took a hesitant step forward. "Colonel, I don't understand. What was that? That procedure. It's not possible." Davies turned his cold eyes on the surgeon. "What's not possible, doctor? That a man's life was just saved? Or that it wasn't you who saved it?" The rebuke was sharp, precise, and it hit Evans with the force of a physical blow. He visibly shrank, the last vestiges of his bluster evaporating, leaving behind a hollowed-out man, confused and ashamed. He had built his kingdom on the bedrock of his own expertise, and that bedrock had just been pulverized into dust. The aide returned, his face pale. He held out the tablet to the colonel. "Sir, you were right. I don't know how this is possible. Her file it's almost entirely classified." Colonel Davies took the tablet. His eyes scanned the screen, his expression shifting from grim curiosity to profound, undisguised respect. He held the tablet for a long moment, absorbing the information, connecting the dots that had been nagging at him since he first saw her arrange that surgical tray. The quiet competence, the unnerving calm under pressure, the encyclopedic knowledge of a procedure that existed only in the shadowy world of special operations. It all made sense now. He looked up from the screen, his eyes finding Anna just as she was signing off the comms, the spotter having confirmed that the medevac bird was in sight. She removed the headset and placed it carefully on the console, her movements once again quiet and unassuming. It was as if a switch had been flipped, the battlefield commander receding, the plain, unremarkable nurse returning. But no one in the room saw her that way anymore. They saw what the colonel saw. They saw a giant who had, for a brief time, revealed her true stature. Davies walked across the floor, the sound of his boots echoing in the now silent tent. He stopped directly in front of her. He didn't speak. Instead, he drew himself up to his full height, his back ramrod straight. He raised his right hand in a salute so sharp, so precise, it seemed to cut the air. It was not the casual salute an officer gives a subordinate. It was the salute of a warrior to an equal, a gesture of profound, earned respect. "Commander Morgan," he said, his voice ringing with authority. "On behalf of this command, I apologize for the unprofessional reception you have received. It will not happen again." The title hung in the air, stunning the assembled staff into silence. Commander, not nurse, not Morgan. Commander. Dr. Evans's jaw literally dropped. He looked from the saluting colonel to the quiet woman, his mind refusing to process the information. It was impossible. She was too young, too quiet. She was a woman. His entire framework of prejudice and assumption was collapsing in on itself. The colonel lowered his salute, but kept his eyes locked on Anna. He turned the tablet so that Dr. Evans and the senior staff could see the screen. The narrator's voice could have etched the words on a glass. Name, Anna Morgan. Rank, Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy. Billet, Special Operations Combat Medic, Tier 1 Developmental Group. Previous unit, Classified Naval Special Warfare Task Force. Service record, Silver Star for Valor during Operation Nightfall. Bronze Star with V for Heroism in the Auramon Valley. Purple Heart, Joint Service Commendation Medal. Combat Action Ribon. The list went on, a litany of quiet heroism, a secret history written in blood and bravery. Under special skills, the list was even more staggering. Advanced field surgery, SEER instructor, high-altitude physiology specialist, long-range marksmanship instructor. And there, near the bottom, was a single, innocuous line that explained everything. Authored and implemented the Morgan Protocol for emergency treatment of pericardial tamponade in austere environments. The room was utterly still. Morgan's bypass. It wasn't delirium. It was the name of the dying sniper's last hope, the name of the woman who had invented the very procedure that could save him. He wasn't inventing a term. He was calling out for its creator. Colonel Davies let the information sink in. A heavy stone dropped into a silent pool. He then addressed the entire room, his voice a low, dangerous growl. "Let me be perfectly clear," he began, his gaze sweeping over every face, lingering for a moment on Dr. Evans. "We are all professionals, but professionalism is not about rank or title or how loudly you can give an order. It is about one thing and one thing only: competence. It is about what you can do when the chips are down and lives are on the line." He gestured towards Anna. "This officer, Commander Morgan, is here not as a subordinate, but as an observer and an advisor on temporary assignment from the highest levels of SOCOM to evaluate our medical response capabilities. The unassuming nurse you saw was a test of your perceptions, your professionalism, your ability to recognize skill regardless of the package it comes in." He paused, letting the weight of his words crush the remaining ego in the room. "Today, some of you failed that test. You made assumptions based on gender, on demeanor, on a quiet nature. You confused silence with weakness. You will learn from this. You will learn that in this world, the most dangerous people, the most skilled professionals, are often the ones you notice the least. They don't need to advertise their competence. Their actions speak for them. Commander Morgan's actions today just saved the life of a Tier 1 operator. Let that be your lesson." He turned back to Anna, his expression softening slightly. "Commander, your quarters have been upgraded. My office, and this entire facility are at your disposal. Whatever you need, you will have it." Anna simply nodded, her expression unreadable. She offered no smile of vindication. No, I told you. So her victory was not in being proven right. It was in the fact that a man was still alive on a mountainside. That was the only validation that mattered. She looked at Dr. Evans, who stood as if turned to stone, his face a canvas of shame and dawning understanding. For the first time, he saw her. He saw the quiet strength, the hidden depths, the immense and formidable capability she had kept veiled behind a mask of deliberate mediocrity. He had mocked a legend, and the legend had not even dignified his insults with a response. She had simply done the work. The story of what happened in the trauma bay did not spread, it detonated. It moved with the speed of battlefield gossip, which is to say, faster than a speeding bullet. The comms operator told the pilots on the flight line. The pilots told the intelligence analysts during a pre-mission brief. The analysts, who traded in secrets and whispers, typed it into encrypted chats that connected them with counterparts across the globe. By nightfall, every soldier, airman, and Marine on FOB Griffin knew the story of the quiet nurse who was actually a legendary Tier 1 medic. The narrative gained texture and detail with each telling. She wasn't just a commander. She was a ghost, a founding member of a unit so secret it didn't officially exist. The procedure wasn't just an improvised drain. It was a mystical technique she had developed while operating alone for weeks behind enemy lines. The sniper hadn't just called her name, he had prayed it. The legend of the Angel of Griffin was born, a modern myth of quiet competence in a world of loud bravado. The change in atmosphere around Anna was immediate and profound. Soldiers would fall silent when she entered the chow hall, their conversations resuming in hushed, respectful tones after she had passed. Young medics would watch her from a distance, trying to emulate the economy of her movements, the unnerving stillness of her posture. They stopped seeing an unassuming woman. They started seeing a benchmark, a standard to which they could only aspire. The most significant change, however, occurred in Dr. Evans. The incident had done more than humble him. It had shattered the very foundation of his professional identity. For 2 days, he was a ghost in his own trauma bay, moving through his duties with a mechanical precision that lacked its usual fire. He was quiet, withdrawn, his booming voice reduced to a murmur. He was a king dethroned, not by a rival, but by his own ignorance. On the 3rd day, he sought Anna out. He found her not in the officer's lounge or the command tent, but in a small, dusty supply room, meticulously cleaning and organizing surgical instruments. She worked in silence, her focus absolute. He stood in the doorway for a full minute before she finally looked up, her expression patient, expectant. "Commander Morgan," he began, his voice rough and used to the texture of humility. I don't have an excuse for my behavior. My actions were unprofessional, and my assumptions were unforgivable." Anna continued to wipe down a hemostat, her gaze steady. "Apology accepted, Doctor, no," Evans said, shaking his head. "That's not enough. An apology is just words. I was wrong. Not just wrong about you, but wrong about my own understanding of this world. I thought I knew trauma. I know operating rooms, sterile fields, perfect lighting, and a team of a dozen assistants. That's not trauma. That's control crisis. What you did, what you know, that is trauma." He took a deep breath, the confession costing him dearly. "I want to learn. I want you to teach me. Teach me what you know. Not just the procedures, but the mindset, the calm, the silence. It was the ultimate capitulation. The arrogant teacher begging to become the student." Anna paused her work. She looked at him, truly looked at him, and saw not the arrogant gatekeeper from a few days prior, but a man who had been given the rare, painful gift of seeing his own limitations. She saw a flicker of genuine desire to be better. Her response was simple, professional, and devoid of any lingering animosity. It was the response of a true leader, one who understood that the mission was more important than any personal slight. The first lesson is that competence is a language spoken through action, not volume, she said, her voice even. "Be in the trauma bay at 0600 tomorrow. We'll start with how to properly pack a wound under simulated fire." She then turned back to her instruments, the conversation over. For her, The incident was closed. For Evans, his real education was just beginning. The headset she had used was never returned to general circulation. The chief petty officer, with the colonel's blessing, mounted it in a simple wooden display case on the wall of the trauma bay. Underneath it, a small brass plaque was affixed. It didn't bear her name or rank. It just said, "Listen before you speak." The legacy of that single event rippled outwards, changing the culture of FOB Griffin in ways no directive or official order ever could. The Morgan Protocol became a mandatory part of the training for every medic and corpsman on the base. Dr. Evans, a man reborn, became its most zealous instructor. He would stand before new classes of medics, the ghost of his former arrogance replaced by a hard-won humility. "Assumptions kill," he would tell them, his voice resonating with the conviction of a convert. "They will kill your patient, and they will kill you. You will judge your fellow soldiers not by the patches on their shoulders or the cadence of their voice, but by the steadiness of their hands and the clarity of their actions. Competence is quiet. Listen for it." The trauma bay itself became a different place. The frantic, ego-driven chaos was replaced by a quieter, more focused intensity. Collaboration replaced command. The lesson had been learned. The best idea, the life-saving insight, could come from anywhere, from anyone, and the job of the leader was not to shout but to listen. Anna, for her part, deflected the worshipful attention with the same quiet grace with which she had deflected the insults. She mentored the young medics, not with lectures, but with quiet example. She showed them how to remain calm by being calm. She taught them precision by being precise. She never spoke of her past, of the medals, or the classified missions. When asked, she would simply say, "That was a different job. This is the job today." Her value was not in her history. It was in her presence. Weeks later, a package arrived for her through the secure diplomatic pouch. It contained no letter, no card. Inside, nestled in foam, was a single, custom-engraved fighting knife and a challenge coin from the Naval Special Warfare Development Group. On the blade of the knife was an etching of a mountain range and a single, simple inscription, Echo 3-1. It was a token from the man whose life she had saved, a message of gratitude sent from one silent professional to another. Anna looked at it for a moment, a flicker of something unreadable in her eyes. Then, she placed the coin in her pocket and the knife in her footlocker, beneath a stack of freshly laundered socks. The trophies were not the point. The work was the point. The sniper lived. The team was better. The mission continued. That was the only reward she required. The story became institutional folklore, a teaching tool for new arrivals. New doctors and nurses, fresh to the FOB, would be shown the headset in the glass case and told the story of the quiet nurse who humbled a hotshot surgeon and saved a hero with a ghost voice. It became a parable about the nature of true strength, a reminder that the most formidable weapons are often the ones you cannot see. It was a story about respect, not the kind that is demanded by rank, but the kind that is commanded by competence. It was a testament to the idea that in the crucible of conflict, character is revealed, not created, and that true professionals are defined not by the noise they make, but by the silence they command. Months turned into a year. FOB Griffin was eventually decommissioned, its mission complete. The soldiers, the doctors, and the nurses scattered back to the far corners of the world. The buildings were torn down, the HESCO barriers removed, and the dust of the Hindu Kush reclaimed the land. But the legend remained. It was carried in the memories of those who were there. It was told and retold, a modern epic passed down from one generation of warriors to the next. The story of Anna Morgan became more than just a story about a single event. It became a symbol of a deeper truth, that a legacy is not a monument of stone or a plaque on a wall. It is the knowledge that is passed on, the standard that is upheld, the quiet competence that inspires others to be better. True legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what continues forward in the actions and character of those you influenced. It's the lesson that echoes long after the voice that taught it has fallen silent. For more stories where competence triumphs over arrogance and where silent professionalism defines their worth, subscribe to Unknown Heroine Tales.